We're going to be talking about universal credit in just a moment. We've talked much about it before on this programme and helping you to make sense of it all. Well, news today that the implementation of the government's flagship welfare reform has been, quote, extraordinarily poor, with much of the £425 million expenditure to date likely to be written off. We're going to talk more on that after this.
Sunday mornings with Molly Green.
Here.
5 minutes ago, these cattle were asleep.
Well, they're certainly not now.
Loving Coventry and Warwickshire's great outdoors.
Have you got many entries in the scarecrow competition?
Yes, we've got 7
Ooh,
scarecrows.
are they frightening?
No, we've got a nun on a bicycle.
Listen, tell me, what do you love about gardening? When your mum says, come on, Joel, we're going up the allotment.
Because I like digging out weeds.
You like weeding. How are you feeling?
We survived this morning to wake up to this fantastic sunshine. It just couldn't have been better for us.
Whether it's your window box, your back garden or beyond. Molly Green, back Sunday morning at 9 on BBC Coventry and Warwickshire.
Now, as I mentioned, the biggest ever shake-up to the welfare system happened last April, and we've been keeping you across all the changes here on the programme. Now, whether it's the so-called bedroom tax or PIP, if you've been affected, you'll know all about it. Well, today, Universal Credit, the government's flagship welfare reform programme, has been savaged in a report by MPs. The Public Accounts Committee says its implementation has been extraordinarily poor, and that much of the £425 million spent developing the system so far might have to be written off. Margaret Hodge is the MP chairing that committee. She says so far the project is an unmitigated disaster.
There are failings right through the organisation. What has happened is that they haven't got a chance of launching this in the way that they wanted to, within the time frame they wanted. They've wasted hundreds of millions of pounds, particularly on IT, although at the moment we haven't got the final figure. And of course, something that we all sort of think is an important thing is not going to be implemented in the way that it intended.
So I'd like to know from you what your experience of the benefit changes have been so far. Have you found the system, for example, easy to navigate? Well, do get in touch. We're very easy to get in touch with 0845 900 5200 or text 81333, but start your message with CW. Phil Agulnik is the director of the online benefits calculator entitled2.com and joins me. Phil, what's your response to the findings of the Public Accounts Committee that it's been an unmitigated disaster?
Well, thank you very much for having me on the programme. It's certainly been a very problematic programme to roll out, and it's all going to happen a lot more slowly than the government originally said. So the report today isn't news. We've been hearing about problems with the programme for a while, but it confirms that, there are difficulties in the Department for Work and Pensions, and everything will have to slow down.
I mean, it's interesting. It's not just the Commons Public Accounts Committee. There's also been criticism by the cross-party committee, echoed by the National Audit Office, who said back in September, and I think we reported on it on this programme, that management of the £2.3 billion project had been weak and financial controls had been inefficient. I mean, this is a major project. One might have hoped that it would have all gone a little better and a little more smoothly.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, there's a long history of projects in central government going wrong. So you think of things like the Connecting for Health IT programme, and so there is quite a lot of history here of big central government projects causing lots of issues.
But you know what? This isn't the first one. You've got to think of the NHS and National Computer Scheme and so on, where so much money was wasted. But I mean, I'm just looking at some of the comments here. I mean, they're saying that from the outset of the project, senior civil servants had failed to grasp the enormity of the task they'd been set by ministers. They didn't monitor progress adequately and hadn't intervened when issues arose. I mean, if you're going to roll out a major project, you think you'd try and sort of get all your ducks in a row first.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it is a really damning report, that's for certain. But yeah, what DWP are saying now is that we know it's gone wrong. We've taken steps to fix it. Whether that's true or not, we'll only find out in the fullness of time.
What's your experience of people using the system to date? Are they getting their heads around it? Is the system showing any signs of working better?
The key thing is hardly anyone has actually gone on to universal credit. So the pilots that have already happened, which are up in Manchester, they were meant to have about 7,000 people going through that new system. It's probably going to be something more like 1,000 going through it, so not many people.
That's a drop in the ocean, isn't it?
It wasn't intended to be that. I mean, 7,000 isn't that many people.
No.
But no, they've been below what their expectations are. Now, it is being rolled out to more places, so it's coming to Rugby a fortnight on Monday, November the 25th. It will start in Rugby, but that doesn't mean that lots of people in Rugby are going to be switched over to it. It just means that some people who lose their jobs and sign on for the first time, so they're not on existing benefits, and they don't have children, they don't have a partner, and they're not disabled, they will go on to the benefit. They've got to live in Rugby, but they've got to meet these really tight eligibility criteria, so it's only going to be a handful to start off with.
And if it's a handful, is it of any use whatsoever?
Well, the report today is saying no, that it's not.
So it makes a mockery of the whole system, doesn't it?
DWP would say, look, start small, start with the really simple cases, so people who aren't currently claiming benefits, and take it from there.
I mean, I know, as one would expect, the Shadow Work and Pension Secretary has said the report was another nail in the coffin of the government's promise to deliver universal credit on time and on budget. But at the end of the day, we're talking about people's lives here, people's livelihoods, how they're going to eat, how they're going to heat, how they're going to continue to live in their own homes.
I couldn't agree more, and I think it seems likely that the timetable for rollout will go back a bit. So the original timetable was to get everyone onto the new benefit by 2017, and from where we are now, that seems a bit on the optimistic side.
And that's a fair few years away. I mean, responding, the Department for Work and Pensions has said universal credit was a vital reform which would ultimately bring 38 billion in benefits to society by helping people into work and reducing fraud. Do you still buy that?
It's a useful reform, but I mean, it has been hyped a lot in terms of everything that it's going to do. It will eventually simplify the benefit system, but with all these things, transitioning from one system to another creates problems. So eventually you end up with a simpler system, but in the kind of in-between period, when people are going from the current system to the new system, it tends to make it a bit more complicated in between times.
Well, as we say, when's it rolling out in Rugby? In a small pilot kind of way?
Yeah, really small pilot, only affecting new claimants. It will really only affect a handful of people, but it starts on November the 25th.
We'll watch that very carefully. Phil Agulnik, thank you very much indeed, Director of the online benefits calculator, entitled2.com.